So there is this one mistake that nearly all managers make when they're trying to coach an underperforming team member that essentially guarantees that nothing will change. And I gotta tell you, many of my clients have made the exact same mistake as well, so it is nothing new. Which is why in today's video, I'm gonna show you why most coaching conversations fail to create any real change, the exact words you should use when you're addressing performance gaps, and how to get your team member to actually take ownership of their improvement. And by the way, I'm going to give you some specific scripts that have worked for so many of my clients as well as myself, because honestly, winging it rarely does. So first, let me ask you this. Have you ever had that team member who just isn't hitting the mark? Maybe they're consistently late, they're missing deadlines, or their work quality just keeps on slipping. And so, of course, you sit them down for a conversation, and then one of two things happens. So A, you end up over-explaining or maybe even sugarcoating the message by saying something like this. Yeah, listen, I know that you're really trying hard and I really appreciate your effort, but maybe we can think of some ways to help you get to work a little earlier. I mean, I know that traffic can be a little unpredictable and life happens, but the thing is. Or B, maybe you go the complete opposite direction and give vague, direct feedback and you say something like this. Yeah, well, listen, you're a professional and you already know that coming in late is just simply unacceptable. So I'm going to need you to step up and act like the professional you are. Have you ever said something similar to either of those things and then left the conversation feeling like you said what you wanted to say, but really didn't say what you should have said because it doesn't seem like they actually got the point? Well, here's the truth that took me personally way too long to learn. Most coaching conversations fail because it's unclear, inconsistent, or completely disconnected from what the employee needs to hear. And then as a result, nothing changes and it becomes super frustrating because the same issue keeps popping up week after week, and then there's this resentment building up inside of you. It's exhausting and straight up unsustainable. So if you found yourself in this predicament, not to worry, because I want to show you exactly how to handle this by walking you through a real scenario. So let's say you have a team member who's consistently making mistakes because maybe they're not paying attention to the details. What do? How do you have an effective coaching conversation with that team member? Well, let's bring back two of our favorite characters on the channel. I'm sure you'll remember them, Mediocre Mindy and Life-Changing Linda, to help us level up. So first, let's consider how Mindy would handle the situation. So Mindy, being the overly empathetic and conflict-averse manager that she is, might see this and say something like, "Hey, Sarah, so I just want to say I know that you're working really hard, right? And I can definitely see you care a lot about your job. And that's why I don't want you to feel badly about this, but maybe we could just try to be a little bit more careful when we're reviewing and then submitting our work. I mean, I will say I know that we all make mistakes sometimes. I've definitely been there myself as well. But it would be really helpful if we could just do a little bit of a double check of things before we submit it. That way we know that it's not, doesn't have any errors. Does that make sense for you?" So now let's debrief. There were, of course, a couple of things I found that were wrong with this approach. For one, the tone did not match the seriousness of the infraction. I mean, this wasn't a small typo. These mistakes had downstream consequences, but Mindy kind of tiptoed around it like it was no big deal. Two, there was zero specificity. Sarah doesn't know which mistakes she made or why they matter, so how is she supposed to improve? And then three, there was no call to ownership, right? Mindy did all the talking. Sarah just nodded along and left without a single action. Overall, I would say the message is completely watered down. In fact, I don't know about you, but if I was Sarah, I would walk away saying like, wow, my manager is just so nice and so understanding. I guess I'll just try to double check my work next time, right? I mean, in her mind, there is no urgency to this. She thinks she just needs to do her best, and she has no idea that she's putting her credibility, her team's timeline, and Mindy's trust at risk. All because of the language and the delivery of that approach. And most of all, nothing will change. So I gotta ask you, does that sound familiar to you in any way? If it does, I want you to know, like, no judgment. A lot of leaders have found themselves in the exact same predicament. I mean, that's why we're doing this video. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring to the surface life-changing Linda, our awesome sauce manager who has the skill set and the tools to approach this completely differently. She's gonna follow a simple 3-step framework that will make a world of a difference in the impact. So first, she starts by anchoring her message with intentionality. Meaning, before she even gets into the conversation, she sets it up properly. And she does so by scheduling a one-on-one and letting Sarah know that they'll be discussing quality standards so that the conversation doesn't feel like an ambush. Now, why is this important? Because when people feel safe and prepared, they're more likely to open up and actually process the feedback instead of getting defensive and then shutting down. So that's the first step. Then she jumps into the one-on-one and she says this.
Hey, Sarah, thank you so much for meeting with me today. So as you saw from our agenda for today's discussion, I wanted to talk to you specifically about quality standards. And I want to talk to you about this because honestly, I care. I care about your growth here. And I want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to set you up for success so that you can do your best work in all aspects of your role.
All right, so let's just pause here for a quick second to observe what we just saw. I'm sure you saw that she was very clear in setting her team member up, Sarah in this case, to understand what the purpose was of this conversation and what her intention was. So those are the 2 things that we could see in there. Now let's move on to seeing how she names the gap that she wants to talk to her about. Let's see how she does that.
So over the last 2 weeks, I have noticed that there have been some errors in the client reports that you have been submitting my way. So for example, there was missing contact information in the Henderson file. There was incorrect budget figures in Tuesday's proposal that you sent over, and then incomplete data in the market analysis report that I received yesterday. Now, these mistakes are requiring myself and other team members to spend additional time reviewing and then correcting the work. And it's also creating delays for other team members who actually depend and need that information in order to move forward and make decisions on their projects.
All right, so let's pause here again, right? Because I really want you to capture the point. So did you observe what she did? She clearly named what the gap was. She clearly said what was happening and what was not happening that was causing the issue. Now, here's why this works. As a manager, you have a vantage point that your team member doesn't. And it's your job to name what you see clearly, specifically, and without sugarcoating, because if they don't know exactly what needs to change, they can't change it. Okay, so now that we're clear that it's important to clearly articulate the gap, let's see how she invites ownership and looks forward in that conversation, okay? Let's peer back in.
So I thought we would just debrief on that today, and I'd love to hear what's your take on what might be causing these oversights to happen. Also, what support or process change needs to happen so that we can catch these details before you're submitting your work. So I'd love to hear from you on that.
Okay, so did you notice what she did? Well, after, like we said, after her naming the gap, she didn't just deliver feedback and tell her what to do. She co-created the solution with her, right? By asking questions. When people participate in the process, they're more likely to take ownership and actually follow through. That's why it's so important for you to be asking questions to invite people into the creation of the solution with you. And that's it, right? There we have a simple, effective structure that takes an ineffective encounter and turns it into one that builds clarity, ownership, and momentum. The truth is, the wording, the setting, and the questions you use in these moments can mean the difference between a team member who improves and one who doesn't change. So if you hear nothing else, hear this. It's not about being nice or being tough. It's about being clear and creating the right conditions for change. Now, this of course is a great starting point, but in real life, I know that things get really messy because implementing this when emotions run high, when you're met with defensiveness or awkward silence or even pushback, then it's a whole different ballgame. And that's exactly where a lot of managers get stuck, in those pockets of like weirdness, right? It's the classic difference between knowing something in theory and actually knowing something fully and being able to apply it in high stakes, nuanced situations so that you don't make the wrong moves that set you back for weeks. So what do you do if you have a team member who, let's say, gets defensive the second that feedback comes up? or nods like they understand, but nothing changes. Well, I'll tell you what you don't want to do, and I say this from deep care. You don't want to apply a one-size-fits-all approach to this, because all that's going to do is create more friction, waste your time and energy, and it chips away at your credibility fast. So if you've been dealing with that kind of situation, first, know that you're not alone. And also know it's exactly what I help my clients with inside the New Manager Accelerator program. You know, NMA is really and truly where you go from, I wonder if I should say this, to, well, I'm going to say this, and here's how I'm going to respond when they push back, they shut down, or spiral, like I've got this under control. And our students are able to do this because we give them scripts and diagnostic tools and real-time coaching support so that they're not guessing their way through any of this garbage anymore. So my friend, if you are ready to stop doing this on your own and finally just get the support and the training that you need, then a great place to start is with my free training, where I'm going to walk you through the framework I teach inside of the program, as well as the tools and resources that are in the program so that you can see whether or not NMA is a good fit for you. So I will leave that link in the description box below so you can get signed up for free.